Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. Great to have you company for another episode of the show. Now today we are in for an absolute treat. I'm talking to someone who you may not have heard of before, but this particular guest has 2 large multidisciplinary clinics and is opening 5 more. They have 5 on the go right now. My guest is Dr. Pankaj Arora. He's an emergency physician. He's been in emergency medicine for 28 years. He is the founder of the WISE Clinics, which stands for Walk-In Specialist Emergency Clinics. And he has got some incredible insights around how to scale rapidly. And this episode is all about how do you build team? How do you choose locations? How do you maintain culture? How do you understand that the growth of the business has to come after the growth of yourself? And Pankaj describes this as a spiritual journey as much as anything else. So tons and tons and tons of pearls of wisdom that are going to be really relevant for dentists in their practices too. Now, before we get into Pankaj and his wonderful wisdom, I want to talk to you a little bit about Greg Page, the original Yellow Wiggle. Many of you would know that Greg had a heart attack a little while ago. He came off stage after performing with the Wiggles and collapsed, and it was terrible. It was very distressing, but thankfully the good news is that there was a defibrillator nearby and a nurse who could apply the defibrillator and help resuscitate him. Now, Greg, since then, has been on a mission to make sure the defibrillators around the country are both visible and accessible so that if anyone goes into cardiac arrest or has a heart attack, then they're able to be rescued and resuscitated more readily. Nothing could be worse than having someone collapse and not knowing where the nearest defibrillator is. Imagine if that was you or your family members, they collapse and you're going, my God, I need a defibrillator. I don't know where to find it. So Greg's foundation, which is called Heart of the Nation, is aimed at helping get all the defibrillators in circulation registered onto an app so that if the worst thing happens, someone collapses, has a cardiac event, then at the very least we know where to find the nearest defibrillator. And I believe the dentists are uniquely positioned to help Greg in this quest. So my request, my plea, my hope is that as a profession, we can get behind this really important initiative. There's about 5,000 or so dental practices around the country. We did a bit of a straw poll and found that somewhere between half and 2/3 of them will have a defibrillator. So there's a couple of thousand defibrillators that we could register on the Heart of the Nation app. So that if the worst case happens, someone collapses, then they can come and grab our defibrillator. They can come and use it. And that person, that victim of the heart attack, has the best chance of being resuscitated and having a good life ahead of them. We know that first bit of resuscitation is what makes and breaks the survival rate. And if we can get a defibrillator onto people quickly and shock them, if that's appropriate, then we know that has a massive impact on the survival rate. So come and join us. Greg has asked Savvy Dentist to get the message out to the dental community, and we're really passionate about this. We feel like this is a total no-brainer for dentists to be involved in. There's no cost, there's no nothing, just doing a good deed. It takes 5 or 10 seconds to register your AED, your automatic external defibrillator, onto the app. And I'd really love it if you could help me help others get behind this cause. It's a great cause, and it's something that I think we can make a real difference in. So let's all jump on that. So all you need to do is head to heartofthenation.com.au/join and register your defibrillator there. But for now, let's get on to Dr. Pankaj Arora and his secrets for scaling up. Dr. Arora, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us on the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's great to be talking to a medical colleague today. And of course, your background is in emergency medicine. You're an emergency physician by training. Your story is phenomenal. Your success is remarkable. And of course, everyone's life tends to go in little zigzags rather than straight lines. So I'm curious to ask a little bit about your background, Pankaj. Could you tell us how you found your way into emergency medicine and then, of course, how the WISE Clinics came to be?
Thanks, Jesse, first of all, for having me on your podcast. I've heard a lot about you and the good work you do in dentistry business. And I have been an emergency physician for now about 28 years. And I have worked in 4 different continents. Trained first in India, where I got my basic medical degree and had good experience in a busy emergency departments. And then I made my way to UK and did about 2 to 3 years of training over there. And then I became very academic after that, and was president of an American College of Emergency Physicians for about 3 years, and gave my education part back to the society, went back to India, helped developing emergency medicine as a specialty in that country. And that journey took about 12 to 14 years. My movement to Australia happened while I was doing all this work of education in India in 2003, where I came to Australia and completed my training in the emergency medicine through the College of Emergency Physicians in 2008. And I have been a staff specialist, senior staff specialist, and a director of emergency medicine training at Royal North Shore Hospital till today. Actually, I do 2 days of my work life is public hospital, and rest of my life is a business. And I really love this balance, and I think I need to keep giving back to the society where I actually grew from. So it's a combination of my life is a combination of emergency physician in a public system and running quite a few businesses on the side with emergency practices.
Well, to get into it, you are the founder and CEO of Wise, and I'm just curious to ask how that business came to be. What was the impetus for creating those clinics? You've currently got 2 clinics at the moment and 5 in the pipeline. And we're gonna talk about juggling lots of balls at the moment, but in a moment. But that's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. So I'm just curious to ask about the origin of Wise itself. What was the problem that you saw that needed to be solved?
Look, I have been an employee, or say I call it as an employee mentality for whole my life, including my father done in a public sector job for 30 years. And then I was feeling very safe in finding an emergency medicine job. Every country you go, you got no problem in getting employed. Australia being the best place to be employed as an emergency physician, honestly. And with that mentality, it's been now, I think, 2016 when I came in, I used to turn up at work, see these frustrated patients who have already waited for about 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours before they come to me, and all their frustration used to come to me. And before I even start seeing them, they are angry. So it was a very wrong step to start with the patient journey. And at the end of the shift, it was never a happy day. It was never a happy day. And it was saying, why am I doing what I'm doing for 30 years? Should I leave my career? How can I be happier at my own workplace was my big question, which led to the creation of Wise. And that feeling was shared by a few of my colleagues as well. Though we take pride in doing what we do in emergency medicine, we resuscitate patients. Those unconscious patients we resuscitate, they never see our faces. They never, ever come back and say, thank you, you did a great job. But the guys who are fully conscious watching us and not seeing them for hours are the ones which were unhappy and complaining and making us unhappy too. So I thought the journey of Wise started from my own self, wanting to be first, wanting to be into a mode where I'm not employed anymore. And then secondly, it was more of a journey of saying, when I walk out of my workplace, how can I be happier? Can I create my own environment, which I can control myself and is a happy place for me and my patients both. And the biggest factor was a waiting time. And we had to craft with a craft group of a couple of my other physicians. We sat down and built this model thinking, what is the actual problem inside? It's the inherent nature of the emergency medicine itself, the way we triage, the way patients come more acute in front of other patients. So it's creating a walk-in emergency specialist clinic was about Wise, walk-in specialist emergency. Wise was nothing to do with wisdom. It was to do with walk-in specialist emergency, but it sounded Wise. So which means if you're walking in, your acuity is low and you get triaged as per your acuity, which means everyone is lined up and no chest pain or a stroke or a major trauma is delaying your care. So we actually just took this model of a ground floor of a hospital, what we call it as emergency plus diagnostics, and pulled it out from the ground floor of the hospital and put it in the community so that community can access all the services of a hospital outside the hospital. And that's sort of when we first started, we weren't sure how it was going to work. It took us a journey of 4 years of as a business, like we were thinking of closing down at year 3 when we weren't even getting numbers to even pay the bills of the rent and the salaries. And COVID hit us, was even the worst time. And that journey was a very challenging journey until the education, the right marketing, the right branding happened, and the right amount of patient number reached where we thought, now we're in the safe zone, and clock started ticking. Last 2 years, we've been in the in what we call it as a black line in the Excel sheet from the red.
Yep.
So that was a bit of a relief, and I think this journey was very humbling. And for someone who's never done business before, being a physician all your life, and it had such a learning experience, and I sometimes call it a spiritual journey for me. It has been last 6 years, and the success which came with it was all related to keeping your clarity in mind, thinking, why am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? And at the end of the day, I realized I was actually doing it for myself.
Yeah.
And the more I focused on my well-being, the better it became. Because if I was happily delivering care, I doubt my patients were unhappy ever. So that was an important part. And that also led me to thinking how the teams who are working on the floor, their happiness matters. And it was a journey when we took up to 4 years and everyone was happy in the place, because that's what we wanted to create, because the teams were designed in a way that they are not stressed. Patient waiting rooms were designed in a way they are not stressed. And we are feeling like a lounge feeling and treating with emergencies. Patients would enter and look at the environment and say, oh my God, I don't feel like in a hospital. And that impact, everything was designed around being this. We were growing fast after the 4 years. And suddenly we felt that we were at that stage where, why is it working? What we are doing, why is it working? And that didn't got a realization till I actually walked out of the business for 3 months to see how it does itself. So I think this was the first big challenging step for me when we were getting busy, starting ready for the second center to be open. My presence was needed in 2 places, Gold Coast, and which is our second center, about 1 hour flight journey from Sydney. 2 centers, one in Sydney, one in Gold Coast. Will I be traveling at 2 places? How it's going to work? How are you going to make these 2 places work? And that challenge sort of made me sit down and think, what is it that I did which worked in my first clinic that was successful in the second clinic without actually being present there? And that's the scaling part of it, right?
Well, that's exactly right. And my ears have just pricked up there massively. So before we get into the scaling part, when you had the first location, am I correct in thinking that first location served as a blueprint for subsequent locations?
Yes, and that was the whole kind of a concept to start off, saying we will never be one location, we'll be multiple locations, because we were entering into the area which no one in Australia has tried before, which is a space between the GP clinic and a hospital world. And we were specialists from the hospital world coming into the community to trial a new way of working, which is happy space for both patients and us. The challenges which came here, because we were doing everything as it comes to us, at about year 2 or 3, everything was being innovated on the go. New processes were formed every day, and we were just doing whatever thought was the right thing to do. Until I found a reception staff who started questioning me a lot, saying, what happens if this happened? What happens if this happened? What happened? And I was very frustrated with that reception staff. And I said, actually, who are you? And she said, I'm an industrial engineer. And I said, what? I said, okay, so what are you working in a reception? I said, whatever the background was, she was from overseas, and an industrial engineer, ended up finding a job in our reception. But at that moment, our company started taking a different shape. She started putting those processes and getting it documented for us. And we started calling it as a Wise Bible.
Yep.
And that Wise Bible started to become the true source of information for all of us. And the complexity of our practice is same as a hospital. You've got multiple departments. You've got radiology, you've got pathology, you've got dentistry, you've got specialist rooms, you've got emergency room, nurses, reception, technicians from sonographers. It's like mirage of things which are there. But it was being done in a random way until this person came and put it all together in a structure and documented it. So I thought, wow, this is what we need for scaling. This is a blueprint for our scale. So it wasn't in our mind how we'll do it, but was an accident of a receptionist turning out to be an industrial engineer and turning this book for us, saying, this is your wise book. And we sort of then took the same book and handed over to the Gold Coast and saying, this is how you do it. So it was really good. The first blueprint itself was naturally developed through the staff themselves to be able to make a second center easy. The second center wasn't that easy, honestly. We had about 1,000 meetings and so many visits there. But after the second visit, the next 5 looked like we can have cores of 5 teams which can be deployed, and they have got their documents of what they do with it.
I'll ask you about the teams of 5 in a second, because I think that's really interesting. We call that in my world a bit like a transition team.
Yes.
Obviously, very fortunate that receptionist happened to be an industrial engineer. That sounds like a little piece of good luck.
Yes.
What role do you think luck has played in your success so far versus strategy and design? And has it played a role? I'm curious to understand that intersection between good strategy and meeting an industrial engineer and how lucky that was.
Look, one thing, it was lucky, but the second thing I will also say is an entrepreneur and as a journey taker who is started a journey with a mission and a kind of a passion for what you do, lead you to be a person who is open to everything.
Yeah.
Right? Everything and anything. And at that time, I didn't read books on business that this was required, right? I was just moving on, doing my clinical work on the way. But I think the whole thing of opening your mind up to people, listening to your teams, finding strengths in your team and giving them the right opportunities. And I think it was listening which made me like an open thing for, and today all of my employees have got different strengths.
Yeah.
And I just sort of work on their strengths and get them the best position. Their strengths can be shown and they can be happier, right? If you put a wrong person on a wrong team, you're gone, right? Yeah. So yes, luck has to play a part, but taking that opportunity of luck is also something.
I agree, 100%.
So there are things around us we don't see, we don't appreciate. So as a business owner, you have to keep your eyes and ears open and respect what other people carry strength. And one thing I'll definitely tell you that the real growth and real scaling starts when you start believing that you are not the best person for that job.
Amen. Amen. And that's a really common problem for dentists. I imagine it's a similar problem for medical practitioners
as well. Oh my God, tell me about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
God featuring. We're the God featuring. We just have to be the best in our clinic, can't we?
We do. And I think sometimes the challenge with that is our ego just kind of gets hurt if we actually realize that we don't want to be the best. It's great to have someone who's better at you other things that frees you up to do the role that only you can do as the CEO and the visionary of the business, right?
Absolutely. And I say literally, I was not leaving the floor. I would pick up every shift for first 2 years. And I said, how can my patients be looked after by someone else? You know what? They love me. They come. And at the time when people used to come and say, can I see Dr. Arora? That was like a moment of saying, wow, my name is spreading, right? So I didn't realize for a long time that wasn't a good thing for my business, right? That realization came later when I was working 7 days a week and people start saying, we're working for you. I thought, oh no, this is not the right direction we are going. So I had to put that myself down. Yes, I am a very good doctor, but I could be available for an advice. I could back a person, but I need to get this roster filled by someone else and invest in someone else to be able to grow.
I think there's a lot of lessons in there, ladies and gents. If you're listening to this, perhaps just replay that last moment or two from Pankaj and perhaps take heed if that's you. I know certainly I've fallen prey to that as well. And I should know better, but even still, from time to time, my ego is just a little bit, when someone says they want Jesse, it makes you feel good, but it doesn't actually serve the business. And ultimately, I don't think that serves the patient or the client in the long run as well, because I think, we can't spread ourselves so thin.
Yeah.
You've chosen areas, obviously you're in Sydney, you're in the Gold Coast. I'm curious to ask about location selection. And I'm curious to ask about how you identified how much capacity to add into each of those locations, because obviously the Gold Coast is a major centre, Sydney is clearly a huge centre. What sort of planning, what sort of data points, what sort of considerations did you give to the location selection? But then equally, how do you know how many emergency physicians to have room for, or dental chairs, or how many radiology units do you need? How do you figure out the capacity that you're building?
But by the time we opened the second center, we had reasonable data with us, right? But I'll take this to even more basic and a simple thinking, which I come from. I was of the opinion after 2 years, I cannot run this alone. Yeah. And the amount of work needed to run an emergency practice needed a lot of ownership. Mm-hmm. Like I was fully involved with my money in it, with my life in it, with my all assets sold and put into this business. So I was fully committed and ownership. And I couldn't see that happening without someone else being committed that much. So my first point was not location, honestly, because the market was like empty ground for me. Like I could open anywhere and it'll run. That was the kind of it was. Now that we had the proof of how we can educate people in using our center. But the main thing was, who is my next partner? Was my location, honestly, secondary thing. First, Gold Coast was chosen because someone was ready to put their commitment to it.
Right.
So these centers are not run just on the investment. These centers are run on the commitment of the physicians.
Got it.
So those commitment was so important for me that I was approached by developers, hospital groups, all these people have got this beautiful location, blah, 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 please open there. But for me, more important was who's going to work in there? Who are the people who are going to be committed in there to make it a personalized service? So that was one part which I sort of I was looking at first. So Gold Coast was not a location search, was more of a saying, who are the people going to work and align to my values and align to my ways of working, and they can open there. But within Gold Coast, there's a strategy. We look at things like insurance rates, the demographics of the age population, the usage of the emergency department, and then also what route they take to go to the emergency department. And we stay how many kilometers away from an emergency department, but still capture most of the population coming. So these are the secondary location targets. We've got a whole list of now documented location, what you call it as a criteria. We don't even talk to any developer unless they say, have you got this criteria fulfilled? Yes, we have. And we go to them. Otherwise, I think the first thing I would choose is my team first before I will go for location. And honestly, that's a big challenge in Australia at the moment.
Finding teams. So I'll ask you about finding team in a minute, but just coming back to the finding partners for a moment, just so I understand the business model and we can articulate that. You have 2 existing locations, 5 locations ready to go.
Yep.
Are each of those locations having a business partner, a different business partner in each location, and that business partner will probably be the lead emergency physician in that department, and they will manage the day-to-day on the floor type of operations, and Wise itself will provide the infrastructure, the Wise Bible, and perhaps reporting structures around that.
Absolutely. So that's how we're working. So we have a partnership of Wise in every center, but then there will be 4 more physicians who will be partnering with them. They will look after the local, we'll look after the admin side of the whole process, including HR, marketing, branding, and the day-to-day running of the consumables and making sure everything is staffed, buildings are maintained to the standards we have to maintain, even to the level of compliance, governance is also done centrally.
I understand documented processes and systems. I'm an ex-military guy. We had a system for everything. You wanted to change a nut on a bolt, you had to follow the system of doing things. What I have found in healthcare is that sometimes, not always, but sometimes qualified professionals don't want to be told how to do it a particular way. So what I'm trying to...
Including me.
And me too, right? I'm very good at writing systems. I'm just not good at complying with other people's systems. But what I wanted to ask you was ensuring consistency and adherence to the Wise Bible. How does that look on a practical level? What does that look like? Look,
this is challenging. I agree. No two doctors think alike. No two physicians think alike. There's a lot of debate goes in our meetings when we talk to doctors. They don't like those fixed guidelines of saying you have to do it in this way. So when it was being written, I was fully aware of it, right? We always left a chance of flexibility and movement in there. And like in Gold Coast, the lead physician wants to do it differently. And somehow we may like his way too. But we say, please, you know what? If that's the way, actually, let's talk about it. Let's maybe change on both sides.
Yep.
And we do take that with a very good respect, and there is a little bit of a conversation happen, but we do take it seriously that we don't change it to an extent which it becomes like really inconsistent in the two centers. Experience will become inconsistent in the two centers. So there is a respect for that, but at the same time, the flexibility is enough that we can talk about it and actually adopt the better of the two practices.
Yep.
There is a challenge there which we deal with it, and we allow people to move outside the Bible range, and we actually not that strict, militarily strict on that, but that guide itself gets them started in the right direction. And being a new company, being a company which is growing and innovating, the new things which they bring sometimes is for better, and we are very eager to change. And the active change in the Bible is the best part. It's on the internet. You can actually have an access and change those protocols by discussing. It is not a very formal process to go through this committee, have sensible meeting. If it's fine, just go and change it there, and everyone agrees with it. Still a democratic process there.
Yeah, and what I really like about that is being entrepreneurial in nature is you're nimble. You're able to adapt rather than get bogged down in layers of bureaucracy, as you say. And I think that's perhaps a difference between a hospital-based structure and what you've put together, right?
And sometimes this will become challenging as the number of centers would increase, and then there'll be strictness around that. There'll be things around that. But I think having that flexibility approach and that ownership approach of each centers and understanding why that exists, it just creates that, I'll say, a similar experience. I don't see a difference of an experience between Macquarie Park Clinic or a Gold Coast Clinic. Patients say the same things again and again. So I think it's important for the consistency, and it's the ease of the business. The next center doesn't have to do anything. They have got everything ready with them to go. All processes are in place. Yes, you don't like something, you can alter it and just put a asterisk. For this site, we do this way.
Yeah,
fine.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I'd like to ask you a little bit about team.
Yep.
We've spoken about the groups, the team of 5 that go in to establish a new centre. I'd like to ask you who is on that team. And secondly, what I'd really like to ask you about is, as the new locations are staffing and increasing their numbers, how are you training the team? How are you developing the team? Is that done centrally? Is it done on site? Just curious to ask about the Wise way of training and so on, and that initial team as well.
Honestly speaking, while we're scaling, the teams are somehow, again, you'll call it as a luck factor as well, but I call it as a branding factor. The way we have been operating has been so agile and empowering to the teams that we attract the right people, in the sense they know there is fun happening there. People get attracted towards those kind of things. And there's a method behind that madness as well, where we kind of identify people from their strengths rather than from their weaknesses, or identify their weaknesses and keep them aside and not give them the jobs which they are not.
Sure, they're not suited for, sure.
So the teams are normally created based on their excitement and interest in the project, right? It's not about you are being dedicated to go there. No, it's not that. So we've created 3 centers by now. First was our initial foolproof proof of concept center, which got a new location next to it, which means we had to do all over again, which involved another team. While Gold Coast was happening, the 2 centers were coming at the same time. So we've got a kind of experience of building two centers by one team. Honestly, that was how it was happening.
Goodness.
One team was actually creating 2 centers, having morning Gold Coast meeting, evening Macquarie Park meeting, morning this meeting, evening this. And those people were created, there was a project manager in each of them, which was actually the part who will just make sure everyone is in. So then the involvement from the local team was very important, the people who were actually going to work in there. So there will be a physician and a nurse in that team. And then there was a non-medical person who's a business person would be in that team. And then there will be people outside that team who are actually the deliverers of the job. We call them as PCG meetings, and what we used to call them was the Vice Gold Coast board meeting. We used to call them at that time, but we can give a different name to it. So those meetings were so regular amongst those 5-6 people. They were the core people who will then take their deliverables out and meet back every week to report back what's it. And obviously there was a Gantt chart at the back of it, which is a standard Gantt chart, which was used in the first clinic, is now used in the second and the third clinic. And for the next 5 clinic, it's got the whole list of things, starting from the stakeholder managements to the marketings to the construction concept designs to architectural to what equipment is required, what problems have happened in the past, what temperature is required in what room. It's got everything in that. So that becomes easy for the teams to just start ticking, saying from the top, saying, you know what, we covered the stakeholder management, 20 stakes taken by these people allocated, go and meet them and send an email to them. Next step, marketing will be activated at this time. So it slowly we're getting better and better at it. But that's just what it has come to. When we started, it was not like that. It was like random things, but then sitting down and putting those pieces together and making it a one piece to say, hey, next team just takes that with these 5 members in it and execute it.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. In terms of ongoing staff development, team training, is that handled locally or is it handled centrally? I'm just curious to ask.
There are 2 steps to it. So we have got an office. We have, it has again come out of the need. We were too close to Macquarie Park. Every administration person was sitting in Macquarie Park and Gold Coast was feeling a little left out. So we left the Macquarie Park and came to the city. So our central office is in the city, where we've got about 15 staff in there at the moment who have got various HR roles, marketing roles, development role. There's a developer process with the industrial engineer. There's a developer working. If there's a new process made, can be automated, we do it at the same time. How many things can be automated in finance? How many things can be automated from reception down to the back end? So there is a team completely looking at that. And there's a project development team, which has got 2-3 project managers, and they will have business development team along with that. They work closely with the marketing team. So this whole thing does get operated through one office, but the local teams have got a lot of empowerment. So if they want to recruit someone, they bring that person in, they interview that person, and they just ask the support of the HR team to say, can we do the paperwork for this? So we don't really get too much involved in picking up a person for them. We do, because I'm a big thing about it. If a team asks for me saying, I need another recruit, I say, go and find it, please.
Yeah, go for it.
Friend, I'm not going to put someone from the top to come muddy your waters. So the teams are very good in bringing their own colleagues. And my first way of hiring staff is nepotism, right? You've got a daughter or a son or a brother or someone who I can employ because I know you now, right?
Yeah.
And then, have you got any friends and family members who can employ? And the third thing which comes is I say to ask your patients who have had an experience of that and to employ them. And then I go to the Facebook and social media, and the last is the Seek and the recruiters. So we do a lot of like yesterday said, we need one person in marketing. We're growing very fast. I said, yes. Who knows a friend who knows of marketing? So I know a friend who knows of marketing. Okay, let's get their CV. So we're just saying we'll just interview them. So if the team themselves are getting the type of people they hang around with, it's the best team culture which develops. That's something which I've just learned on the job. And trying to recruit through Seek and going through 20 processes of that, you just still end up getting a wrong person.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. I might be just going in the wrong direction, but it's been success. 400 employees, all happy with each other.
Yeah. Is it 400 employees across wow, that's a lot of people.
We just last month we acquired a pathology lab with 100 employees in there.
Yes.
The business is growing in most of the directions, whatever, like vertical and horizontal integration of different businesses.
So how do you maintain culture?
My heart throbs on that culture, right? I think I'm the culture man now. Yeah. So if the culture is right, you can sit back and at peace. And to develop the culture, I think it's taught in the books how to do it. But you know what? Doing it is some different beast, right? And I think it takes a lot of self-analysis and self-realization or awareness to create a culture in your organization. I don't think it starts at the people, it starts at you. This is where I sort of, I think I had to work on myself to develop the culture. And I became so passionate about it. That's why I said it's a spiritual journey. It's not a journey which is just a business about money or anything. It's a journey which has just taken me to a different level, right?
It's about personal growth and development, right?
Oh my God, if you're not personally growing, your culture is not going to grow. You have to grow yourself. One of my mentors also talks about where to invest money in most of the time. And first thing he talks about is marketing. But the second thing he talks about is personal growth and advice.
Yeah.
And then you think about staff and the other scaling things. But the journey of how do you maintain your culture is my kind of now become my new me. To maintain that, because amongst 400 employees, how they are talking to the patients, how they are talking to, is that the first Macquarie Park the same as going to be the 7th in Perth or somewhere like that? How it's going to work? So that journey, if you want to listen to the story and you have time for it, right? I just was very tired. This is 2021, and where business had come into the black line, and Dr. Arora is thinking he can have a breather, and the Gold Coast Centre is just under construction or nearly coming to a fill. And I was advised to hire a CEO for my company because the company is doing about more than 15 million. You just need to have a CEO. You can't just keep yourself. You need a financial reporting. You need everything. I said, absolutely fine. Great. So we hired a CEO again through my friend circle. Say, hey, I need a CEO. Oh, I've just left my job. I'll come and join you. So it was a great relationship with the gentleman. And we were really happy that we got someone to look after our staff, our accounts, our marketing. Everything has gone from my headache to someone else, which was another reason I needed to do, because I wanted to grow to multiple places. So when we hired that, I needed bit of a rest. So I took 2 months off and I went on a spiritual retreat. And I was very happy. I wasn't getting any calls, maybe 1 or 2 calls, few questions. I did the orientation for a month before I left. And then at the end of my holiday, I said, so relaxed. Whatever graphs I was seeing were looking good. Patients were still coming in. Reviews were still good. And things were looking like, and I came back, number of iron infusions have increased, number of patients visiting have increased, the bank volume has increased. You were away, still things were working.
Great.
I said, great work. What else can I ask for? So I go to the office. Everyone's face is like, I said, what happened? We don't want to work here anymore. I said, why? I said, why do you work anymore? No, we don't like the things the way things are done there. You were doing it better. Okay, me thing came in. It's me who was actually running the show. Now people don't like it. And then kept going. 5-7 days, I got to 7 people saying, look, we're so unhappy. We're not empowered. We're not able to take decisions. Our thoughts are considered as just a statement, not looked upon on. We are so close to the patient, the feedbacks, nothing gets done with the feedbacks. So I went back to the CEO and said, hey, how's things going? He said, amazing. Don't you see how many patients we're seeing? How much the balance sheet is doing better? I've decreased costs there. I've done this thing there, that thing there. And I said, oh, there's a disconnect there, right? The people are feeling sad and unhappy. And the CEO thinks that things are going great. How do I bridge this disconnect? So I said, hey, by the way, I thank you so much I had a beautiful holiday. I did not do anything. You didn't call me. Things were sorted of themselves. I can't be more thankful to you for giving 2 months of my life to me. And then comes the next question saying, how do you think people are feeling? I think they're feeling great. I said, sure, but I've got this feedback for you. And he took that feedback very humbly and actually said, oh my God, what happened? Why is it not coming to me? It came to you. I said, and then he was the one who opened my eyes after that. He said, you know what? It's your fault. I said, why? He said, you actually you gave me a handover of how things are done. You never told me who you are. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, do you know every company, there's a company called a Striker? I said, yes. She said, they live by their values and their culture is based on their values. And that's what was missing when we did the handover. So now I need 2 hours of your time alone in this room. And you tell me who you are.
Wow.
Why do you do what you do? Why is this why started? What is your intention of doing this as a human being? Because that's what they were missing. I was the guy who was making sure things are running. I was the guy who was making sure the books are okay. It was a thing that the patients are getting looked after. I wasn't the guy who was inspiring them to do why he does things the way he does things. And that was a real eye-opening. So I said, oh my God, I've read this in the books. We need to have values. I never actually created one. And how do you create them? It was a self-introspection process. And my daughter looks after the finance of the company, and she was sitting there and she said, wow, that was powerful. And he said, okay, bye-bye. I'll leave you two together to just think who you are.
Okay.
So the values, that day I understood what founders' values are.
Yeah.
So we sat down. Now, this is beautiful what came out of it. And that's what I'm saying. So we both sat down and said, what do you like giving? He said, you do give this lecture on being employee to an owner. So ownership is one of your values. I said, yeah, I like everyone to own things. I like everyone to be, even the mistakes they should own. They should even think when they're working here, they own this place, not me own this place. That was a feeling I was giving to everyone. Hey, it's your place. You should do it that way, right? And not like saying, hey, do this, do that. So there was a kind of a value in working. The way I worked was I wanted to provide ownership to everyone. I have partners. There will be any company in such a short stage has got 20 partners already in different, and I deal with them, make every partner feel that they're the owner of the place. Yeah. So that ownership was the reason I actually left the job and became an owner of a business. Yeah. So that ownership came out as one big value. That was the big O, put it there. Say, and why do you like ownership? Because I get to give people, right? I get to give. As an employee, I was always asking for a salary. I was always needing something. As a business owner, I can give things now. I can give salaries. So giving became our second value, right? And then giving, ownership, and then in between was I have been a teacher all my life. I've been a learner. As a doctor, you always learn, right? The day the learning stops, you fade out. That's what I said. Even an 80-year-old doctor who's an endocrinologist still reads journals and learns. I think we thrive by learning. So this became our third value. So it was give, learn, and own. And the last factor came from my story earlier. I wanted to be happy at my workplace, and that's why I developed WISE. And so happiness was the last one. So imagine giving, learning, owning, and happiness became the glow of WISE, which means the founder actually did this whole business for these deep values. And that day, when we gave my CEO these values, he said, we are going to celebrate Christmas on that. And we made balloons of GLOH and started flagging glow as our value. So every employee now actually, we go and check saying, so how are you glowing today?
Yeah,
so,
nice.
What have you given today? What have you learned today? What have you owned today? And what have you actually felt happier today about? So this is also leading to my developer saying, hey, I want you to develop a glow meter. At the end of every shift, everyone needs to tell me what they gave today, what they learned today, what they owned today, and what they're happy. Now, we went and bought this new business in pathology with 100 employees. The moment we said these are our values, everyone's face was like lit up.
Wow. That
I'm going to work with these values now. Every time you feel stressed, go back to your value. Every time you are in a conflict with any patient or anything, go back to these values. So, and that way I feel myself, I was asked to dig myself from inside, put that out there so that every employee can hear about it and they can behave like that. So that was a story about values and maintaining culture. And I feel that this will work.
I absolutely agree with you. I had the good fortune recently to travel to the United States with some of our clients to visit a company I care deeply about, and that's called Zappos. Zappos is the world's largest online shoe retailer. They were acquired by Amazon some years ago, and their founder was a guy called Nick Swinmurn, and he had an angel investor in Tony Hsieh, and Tony Hsieh came in, and having sold a previous business where he lost control of the culture, lost control of the values, they became obsessed with values and culture at Zappos. And when we were walking around Zappos, and I'm sure it's the same with Glow at WISE, you can not just talk about the values, you can feel those values. You can see it oozing out of every part of the organization, and I think that's fantastic because I absolutely agree that will be a massive culture elevator for WISE. I think you're on a winner there, my friend.
And help me grow. and not worry about who's feeling sad at the back. They got the responsibility of making themselves happy.
Yeah. Pankaj, we have covered a ton of stuff today. I feel like I could talk to you for 3 days. What I'd really like to do is, if you had any words of advice for practice owners, obviously we're talking primarily to dentists. There'll be a couple of doctors listening on this and maybe some other allied health professionals or whoever. What have been the 1 or 2 or 3 key things that you think made all the difference in your journey of scaling up so rapidly?
Yeah. Look, first thing I would say is first introspect yourself and find out what you want. Amongst our doctors, we are very different breed. And what we do is we do all these 10, 14 years of training and become a specialist. And then we kind of fall into this trap of being a specialist. And if that's what we want and that's what we love, it's okay to be a specialist, solo practice, and your aim is to just fill up your books and just have a constant salary. I'll call that a salary. As any specialist, even if they're doing a business, if they actually want to see 20 patients a day, you can't see 24 in a day, right? You can only see 20 as a solo practitioner, and your books are filled. It becomes your salary after that. You can increase the price there. You can increase a little bit of a thing there. You are just an employee. If you're of that mentality, take a job. Take a job.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Nothing wrong with that. Take a job. And I've done it for 20 years. Yes, there was unhappiness in the end. But yes, I enjoyed lots of moments of that too. Take a job. Australia is the best place to take a job as a doctor. You get highly paid. You get lots of holidays. You get overseas trips. It's all good, right? But if you want to grow, if you want to have that goal of have a limitless wealth in your life or value in your life, I would say then you need to sort of first step back from those shoes of being a specialist, right? You need to be letting others do better work than you or find people who do better work than you, right? If you want to grow, what you have to do is empower other people to help you grow. Right. So the first thing I would definitely recommend is identify what you want. And if you want a growth, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to run your business, it's not going to be by just you being involved fully in it. You need to identify the skills of other. You need to have those step back and let go approach, which I've struggled with for 2 years, with it. I was the best doctor. People want to meet me. Why would I let go of that? So that letting go is the hardest bit for us specialists. I've seen accountants doing that too. I've seen, but once you scale as even an accounting company or a law company, whosoever is scaling up, even if you have the best lawyer, you have to have 10 even better lawyers than in front of you to be working the job. So that's the second message I'll give you is, so let go of your specialist self, let go, then only you will be grow. And the third thing, which is very funny, which I felt was, growing is painful. It's called as growing pains.
Yes, exactly.
Growing is painful as growing pain. And some people have really asked me saying, so when you're growing, it's so painful. Why would you want to go through this painful exercise? I said, what do you do when you're actually having pain? You want to get rid of it quicker, right? So just grow faster.
I love that. Grow faster.
Grow faster. And grow faster is the key to avoid growing pains, right? So don't be scared. Don't be scared of having a bigger vision of 20, 30 centers. That's okay. But as long as your first 2 things are lined up, you're set up for growth. And when you're growing, then don't be scared. Then when you take a flight, you have to take a big, fast run on the runway, and then you take off. And it has to be at the highest speed. Can't be at the lowest speed.
I really love that. You've got to accelerate. You've got to grow fast, because otherwise the plane doesn't get off the ground. And thank you. That's a really good metaphor. Pankaj, there's so much that we could explore today, but I really want to say thank you for sharing so openly, so generously your insights, your lessons, your wisdom. And just to come back to something that I said earlier in the conversation where I referenced luck, I don't think there's luck involved in this. I think this is good strategy, great execution, and obviously a great team around you as well. But good on you for all the success you've had and continue to enjoy. And I can't wait to see how the next 5 after this 5 come along too. I think it'll be fantastic. I really, really just want to again take a moment to say thank you, mate. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.